So last night, LaVoy Finicum, the one militia member who's actually killed by the police. Now, there's immediately disagreement about exactly how it happened. We know the general story is that a traffic stop was put on the road. 2 cars filled with members of the militia were on the road. One of them, including Emon Bundy and several others, stopped at that traffic stop. The other, apparently being driven, a diesel truck being driven by LaVoy Finicum, goes around the first vehicle and continues down the road. It encounters another traffic stop further on. He apparently goes off the road, hits a snowbank, jumps out of the car as the wheels continue to spin, and then something happens that results in his death. You're going to see this is put out by a state rep, I believe, Michelle Fiore, who says, "My heart and prayers go out to LaVoy Finicum's family. He was just murdered with his hands up in Burns, Oregon. Ryan Bundy has been shot in the arm." And this we choose simply to represent that early on, people like Michelle Fiore, members of the militia, are saying that either he'd have his hands up or that he was on the ground and the cops just executed him. Now, that is not an impossibility. We know from covering the news in America over the past few years, that sort of thing does actually happen. Generally not with white members of militias, but it can actually happen. And so we're not simply going to guess what actually happened. Why don't we turn to some of the people who are actually witnesses on the scene. I want to show Victoria Sharp. She was the 18-year-old girl in the car with LaVoy Finicum because she echoes some of the early accounts of what actually happened.
Ryan decided to get out of the car and try to go talk to them. And so he gets out of the car, and then the guy tried to, talk to them. The driver was like, "I'm just going to drive. So I'm just going to talk to the sheriff," and he's like, "So either shoot me now or leave us alone." And they were just like, "Turn the car off and put your hands up." So finally, he decided to just drive. So we all got down on the floorboard, and he took off. And then they started firing at us. They started shooting us a bunch of times, and then they had a roadblock set up. And so he ran into a snowbank, and they were riddling the car with bullets. And then when we crashed, they stopped for a second. He got out of the car and he had his hands in the air. He's like, "And rest." He's like, "Just shoot me then. This is what you want, to shoot me." And they did. They shot him dead. They shot him right there because he was just walking with his hands in the air. And I saw it. I swear to God, he was just walking with his hands in the air. And they shot him. And they shot him dead. And then after he was down on the ground, shot him 3 more times. And then they bombarded our vehicle with bullets. Ryan got hit in the shoulder.
So she swears to God that that's what happened. This 18-year-old girl who decided to join a militia who was breaking the law and decided to sing for them. Unfortunately, her story doesn't match up with other members of the militia who were also there. So let's go to Mark McConnell, who's going to describe the same act.
LaVoy Finicum's truck had LaVoy, Ryan Payne, Ryan Bundy, Shauna Cox, and 18-year-old girl that I won't disclose her name. They whipped out, pulled us over, pulled me out of the Jeep first, being a driver, being as tall as I am and such, being armed. Yeah, they were a little rougher with me, but I would be too. Then they pulled Ammon out, they pulled Boot out, and then after they had us secured, they radioed ahead that vehicle 1 was secure, go ahead and proceed with vehicle 2. At that time, we seen somebody come out of vehicle 2, didn't know who it was on the passenger side, and they're about 200 yards up. They went to the ground, they were handcuffed. Next thing we know, LaVoy takes off with his pickup and the other occupants. HRT, of course, pursues. They got further down the road, and we didn't realize there was actually a roadblock about a mile down. Now, anytime somebody takes off with a vehicle away from law enforcement after they've exercised a stop, it's typically, considered an act of aggression and foolish. That when he exited the vehicle, the rear wheels of the vehicle were still spinning, which diesel truck, manual transmission, makes sense. It's possible until it stalls. And he charged after law enforcement. Numerous, her story's changed a few times. She's added pieces, subtracted pieces. I don't know. I really don't know. What I do know to be true is from what Payne said, from what Shauna said, taking, pieces here, pieces there, and from what I witnessed. I didn't see the shooting. He was not on his knees. He was not none of that. He was none of that nonsense. That was a miscommunication on somebody else's part. but he went after him. He charged him. You know, LaVoy was very passionate about what he was doing up here.
That's not a Fed. That's not a reporter. That's not someone who's biased against the guy who got killed. That's one of his comrades in the militia. That's one of the fucking militia members saying that, no, you can't trust what the 18-year-old singer said happened.
Yeah. So now, ironically here, we have guys who would be shocked if they weren't militantly against Michael Brown and Ferguson, using the defense that he had his hands up and said, don't shoot.
Yeah, other than that guy. Some of the others, yes.
Okay, the 18-year-old is.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, in the Michael Brown case, I broke down the investigation of that, where the bullets entered his body, what the witnesses said. And one of the things I focused on to show that he did not have his hands up and surrender, Michael Brown, when he was facing the cop, okay, was that there were a lot of witnesses there who had no reason to side with the cops and who had complained about police abuse, saying he did not have his hands up and surrendering. Michael Brown did not. Now, the common misconception there is that Michael Brown never had his hands up. That's not true. According to witnesses, some witnesses at the scene, and the bullets that entered his body, he put his hands up when the cop fired at him from behind to look at his hands when he had gotten shot in the arm. Okay, so that's what happened to Michael Brown. But I trusted the guys that he was not surrendering because they had no reason to lie about it. They weren't on the cop side. They weren't against Michael Brown. There were witnesses who said, no, he wasn't surrendering. Now, in this case, if we just had the girl's testimony, you might say, well, she was there. There's some credibility in that, right? Okay. And have I seen cops shoot guys when they're already on the ground? Oh, yeah. I've seen that a lot, right? But in this case, you have other militia members saying that just didn't happen that way.
Yeah.
And they have no reason to lie about that. They have the reason to go in the other direction, right? And here they are. They're saying, no, he wasn't surrendering. He was charging at the cops. And this guy basically said they had every right to put him down.
Yeah. And we cover a lot of he was charging at the cops stories. That's what they always say because that allows them to get away with murder in a lot of cases. And so, look, there's already a million comments on this video, and I'm going to get tweets for the next 3 weeks saying, no, he's a martyr for the cause, because it's from people who support the militia's insane philosophy and want him to have been murdered by the feds. But there is such a thing as committing suicide by cops, people who want to be killed by the cops. When you take a random 18-year-old teenager who is unarmed and supposedly charge the cops, and there was nothing in their life that indicated that they wanted to die, it doesn't make sense to say, absent any other evidence, that they were charging the cops, like they thought they were going to take down the cops. But when you have LaVoy Finicum, who said twice right before being shot, just shoot me or let me go, just shoot me, and we have video.
That's according to the friendly witness.
To the friendly witness.
The 18-year-old who's outraged.
Yes.
In a best case scenario, he said, just shoot me, just shoot me.
Yeah.
In the more plausible scenario, he didn't say anything. He just charged the cops, and they thought and he's heavily armed.
Yeah. And we have video going back weeks. This was the TARP guy. This is the guy who said, I'm not going to be put in a concrete box. I'd rather be dead. I'll fight for my freedom. And his friend McConnell saying he was very passionate about what he believed. Look, I find it hard to believe that anyone wants to commit suicide by running at the cops. But if there's any person who has the evidence to show that they were prone to do that, it is LaVoy Finicum. It's a tragedy. I'm not glorifying in his death. I'm not happy he died. I didn't want anyone to die. But this is a guy who certainly seemed like he didn't hate the idea of not making it through this situation. And according to people on his side, that's exactly what happened.
One last time on Tamir Rice. Right-wingers tell me that Tamir Rice, who's a 12-year-old with a toy gun, had it coming. The cops didn't even give him an opportunity to put it down. They didn't ask him what it was. They shot him immediately in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
But he still had it coming for looking a little older, for taking the orange cap off of the toy gun, all these things. Now, if you're that same guy, you're going to tell me LaVoy Finicum, charging at officers, heavily armed, after he'd done a video saying how he would kill them, did not have it coming. That, oh my God, he's the martyr, but a 12-year-old kid who took the orange cap off the end of his toy pistol was shot in 2 seconds flat without charging anyone.
Yeah.
That was justified, but this was not justified.
Yeah.
The only way you could possibly believe that is if you decided, well, I don't care about facts, and these guys are bothering me with reason and logic. I just want my side to be right.
Yeah.
So blah, 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 blah. Okay, I'm the victim. And finally, that's the great irony here. The guys who complain about liberals or African Americans wanting to be victims, oh, they've got the biggest victim complex in the world. Oh my God, after we stole the federal property and we did it with arms and we threatened to murder everybody who comes in.
And we're still threatening to murder everybody who comes in.
And they're actually arresting us? Oh, we're the victims. We're the victims. I got news for you. It doesn't matter what your race is. If you did what LaVoy Finicum did, you shot a video saying, I will murder cops who come to take my weapon away from me, and then you start charging at cops with your weapon, you're going to get put down. And that is the one time that, boy, how could you not justify that shooting?
Yeah.
If you were a cop in that situation, and you got a guy who's avowedly told you he'd like to kill you, charging at you with a weapon, what would you do?